Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. This meeting is being recorded. I'm Brandy Campbell Wood. I am the interim director of the ADU Resource Center of San Mateo County, and I'm joined by Scott Johnson, the executive director of the ADU centers for Napa and for Marin. And we're here to talk about how to build ADUs and hear from a bunch of cool homeowners that are giving their time to share all their lessons learned from recently built projects. Let's click on this. Okay. So we're going to do a real brief intro on the resources that the ADU resource centers offer homeowners for free. We're going to do then a quick review of some state laws that are really awesome and impactful for ADU development and have really made it easier to build in the past, I don't know, 5-ish years. And then I'm going to go through the ADU process pretty quickly so we can spend the bulk of our time discussing the process with our homeowners that have joined us and answering all of your questions. So we will have the Q&A open the entire time. Please feel free to enter all of your questions. We will be answering them throughout, and probably a lot, particularly when we are discussing it with the homeowners. So just keep them up there. We will be typing answers or we'll be answering them live throughout. So ADUs make up a lot of new California housing. Right now, it's around approximately 20% of new housing across all of the Bay Area communities, and in total, 1 in 5 new homes across California. Last year, that was 29,000 ADUs permitted. That's a lot of ADUs. I always like to say it's an old housing typology that is here to stay. It's come back, it's never leaving us, and we need it. And thank God we have these resource centers. So before the state laws started getting passed, which was in 2018, the first one was our Napa Sonoma ADU Resource Center, which Scott is now the executive director of. And that became sort of this template for us to like, how do we do this? You know, it involved a lot of getting the jurisdictions on the same page and really working closely with homeowners to figure out what was the biggest bang for their buck and what helped them through the process the most. So about 1.5 years ago, we put together the ADU Resource Center for San Mateo County as well. And Marin is most recently has joined the Napa Sonoma effort. So basically, the ADU Center was born, and it runs for 2 counties. And we do all of this great stuff for folks for free. We have a detailed ADU guidebook that goes over all the stuff we're going to talk about today, but in a lot of detail. There's homeowner exercises. There's a whole bunch of great stuff, and you can just look at it with each section as you're tackling your process of building an ADU. There's ADU calculators for you to estimate your potential costs and rents and return on investments and loan paybacks. We have summaries of all of the rules for the communities participating in the centers. There's floor plans, there's ADU stories and videos from folks who built. We have also some ADU plans in the plans galleries from participating jurisdictions. That can include either their pre-approved plans or it can include prefab or other standard plans that are available off the shelf for you to start your design process from. There's FAQs. I think really importantly, we offer free feasibility consults for you all. So if you are in the process and you're like, I really need someone to take a look at my site, they're virtual, they're really easy to engage. You sign up on our websites and you can walk away with a detailed report so you really understand what you're going to need to know about your property to build an ADU. The San Mateo Center also has a free helpline hosted by Hello Housing. So if you need to, you can schedule a 20-minute call and speak to them about a problem that you've run into during your process. And in addition to all of our homeowner services, we do support local staff and really advance ADU policy as much as we can with the homeowner in mind. So we're kind of your advocate in a way. There's also this really cool program that I'd like Scott to talk about that the ADU Center is launching.
Thank you, Randy. This is the first time we're publicly announcing this, but we are in development of a community program where you as homeowners can join together and with help of our ADU experts, help each other get through the ADU process from, pre-construction, design, permitting, construction, operation. It's going to be a really deep resource and support community as you go through this ADU process. And we're hoping to have that launched within early next year. We're developing our pilot program right now, but it's the next biggest thing that we've done since we opened in 2020. So we're excited to see where it goes.
That's super cool. We're excited to see it, and maybe we'll replicate it if we can in San Mateo County.
Yeah, and if anyone is interested, you can go to I'll drop the link in the chat. You can go to aducenter.org/community. Just give us your email and where you're from, and I think we have two questions beyond your email. And as we develop it and as we announce it, we'll let you know. So you'll be sort of first to know when it goes live.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Ooh. How did it unclick? All right, let's go to the next slide. Okay, state laws. We're going to do a real quick run through of this. If you have additional questions, again, you can put it in the chat, but you could also email us. All of the centers are available to respond to folks and help them along the way. The biggest state law that occurred in 2020 was allowing ADUs in all residential and mixed use zones with limited exceptions for water, traffic, and public safety. They're also allowed in HOAs. Now any lot can have one detached ADU up to 800 square feet, one JADU, and one conversion, which is huge. There's no impact fees for any ADU under 750 square feet. So that usually is a really great impetus for folks to consider building up to that size and saving some funds along the way. There's lighter parking requirements, in some instances, no parking required, depending on your zone and your community. ADUs are allowed in the front yard, and multifamily developments can also include ADUs as well. And it's easier to legalize unpermitted ADUs. I'll also mention that the state did pass condoization. It is not enforcing that in communities. It's basically saying, hey, you can condoize an ADU, meaning you can sell it as a separate sale. And that's great. But your local community has to adopt that law. It's not just a given that, like some of these others that were a by right, like building an ADU on any lot is by right. Condoization is not. So we like to tell homeowners that if this is something you're really interested in and your community is not yet adopted that, let your elected officials know. The more your elected officials know that their community members want this, then the greater odds are that your local government will adopt that law. The ADU process, we like to break up into these 6 steps. Again, I'm going to blitz through this, but there's detailed information on our website. Download our guidebooks. All of it's free. We walk folks through a whole bunch of this stuff. Getting started, you want to identify your goals, you want to gather inspo, and you really want to estimate your budget and your return on investment. You can definitely do that using our calculators. They're free tools to use. Learning the rules, learning about your property. You could do that through a feasibility assessment with one of us. Learning about what is allowed for your development standards, and then adjusting your budget as needed. I kind of think of the budget as this through line all the way to construction. You want to start early to really understand what your parameters are. You adjust that as you learn about your property, and then you finalize your design. And then you want to ensure by the time construction happens, you have all of that funding and financing lined up. So definitely get started and keep that in mind as you go through the process. For design, you want to consider what kind of ADU you're building. Are you going to hire a stick-built team, a general contractor, a designer, maybe a place that does all of it, or you're going to pick a prefab design? And then you could also consider an existing plan, either a pre-approved plan or some other standardized plan that your designer or architect can start from. There's a lot of communities that offer free ones. San Mateo County's Heart offers several free plans that you can use as a foundation for your plan, or you could outright just use that as your plan. There's a bunch of stuff in my way here. Let me move it all. Thank you. Permits. All right. So we want to prepare for our application with our team. Definitely rely on your team to help you through that. Submitting your application, you might have to revise it 1 or 2 times. The city will give you comments and let you know. And then once they are like, sounds good, you pay your fees and then you move on to construction. And within construction, again, like I mentioned, ensure all of your funding is in place. You want to monitor as you go through the process, work closely with your GC. And then once you pass your final inspection, it's time for move in or rent. Particularly if you rent, we really advise you to learn those rental laws. And there's a lot of resources on our websites that are going to direct you to where you can learn about it. Always do due diligence in finding a tenant and vetting them, ensuring they're a real good fit for your property, because you're going to be real close. And always enter into a rental lease. And finally, thinking through a long-term plan for the care and upkeep of your ADU, particularly if you have a renter, figuring out how to co-manage things is a really good thing to consider. I got a lot of questions in advance, so I wanted to kind of touch on these. Again, detailed guidance on our websites, in our guidebook, but you can also continue to add questions in the Q&A or follow up later. People often wonder about budgeting. It's a big deal. Right now, due to lots of different factors that we all don't need to enumerate, construction costs are high. 300 to 600 per square foot is typical. That can increase with site specific issues or additional construction things that happen during the process that might not be predicted in advance. So we always recommend, like I said earlier, determine early on, use the calculator to estimate. And that's kind of the defining element. One of the defining elements for your project, obviously, will be your budget. Utilities. These are something that they are not, there's not local government oversight or ability. These are utility providers. So your local government isn't going to be able to advance something that your utility provider has to work on for you. So we say early on, once you're considering building an ADU, contact your providers and figure out if there's any red or yellow flags on your property. A feasibility analysis can definitely help you identify that.
And I will
And then
jump in and just say that if you're in the county and you're on a septic system or you're on a well or both, that really is step zero, is you got to figure out your well and septic because everything comes from that. If you can't solve that, you can't have an ADU.
very, very good point. Well and septic, real big deal.
Real big deal.
Real big deal. And finally, we get a lot of questions about valuation and taxes. Generally, your main house is not reassessed, and the value added is typically the value of your ADU. But we recommend contacting your county assessor and getting individualized advice. I'll also mention there was new national guidance on ADU assessment. So they're actually assessing them more realistically for their value, whereas before they were kind of under assessing that. So that could work in either direction, but it's just good to know that it's more realistically grounded now. Oh, that's not the slide I want. Okay, then I'm going to stop sharing right now and I'm going to pass it to Scott. And he's going to facilitate an amazing conversation with our wonderful homeowners that have joined us to share what they've learned.
Thank you, Brandy. So I have the great pleasure of having Holly, Dawn, and Madeline with us tonight. They've all built ADUs in the last couple of years. We lucked out. We've got three different kinds in three different counties, so it's a really good range of ADU experience. We'll have Holly. She built a junior ADU and a garage conversion, which is one of those ones that I always am fascinated by, and we don't see that many of. And Holly, you're in
Santa Rosa,
Okay,
so
Sonoma County.
Sonoma.
That's right. That's Sonoma County. And then if Dawn and Madeline, if you guys want to turn on your cameras and your microphones, Madeline built a basement conversion in her Napa home that is 499 square feet, so just under the wire. And then Dawn, you're in Marin and you built a 1,200 square feet detached ADU, and you were heavily involved in the design and construction of that. Um, so again, thank you all for coming. It's going to be kind of a freewheeling roundtable kind of conversation, but I think I'll probably start out with saying, you know, what was probably the biggest difference between where you started and getting deep into your ADU and the construction and finishing it? What did you wish you had known, or what took you by surprise, I guess? What was the thing that was kind of the biggest surprise for you during the whole process?
Do you want us to just jump in?
Just jump in. Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't know you were
We're
asking.
gonna, yeah, free
Yeah.
for all.
So I went with the architect's recommendation. I work with this contractor. He's done many ADUs. It's going to be great. Okay, a little naive. I did not do my due diligence to make sure that that was a good contractor. Um, he squirreled off with different extra charges and, oh, we're not going to have the cabinets in time, but you could pay $500 expedite fee. So I would say the biggest surprise was to find out the charming contractor was not so charming, and the architect apologized. He says he's never done this before. I said read his Yelp reviews, and you'll see.
Right, right. That's really good advice. Finding a contractor, we often hear from homeowners who, after they get through talking to us, um, they have a real struggle finding either a designer or a contractor, and it's been so busy for so long. It's can be really, you know, I won't say slim pickings, but you really have to kind of dig to find contractors who do this work. I'll jump to Madeline if you're ready for what you think was probably the biggest difference between your starting.
Well, we were inspired and uh, the catalyst for our creating the ADU, other than our mission really about housing, was we were offered a loan that would eventually become forgivable by I think it was actually the state, but administered by the county of Napa. And there were many, many bumps along the way. I mean, I kind of had the impression that that would be very straightforward, and it wasn't. It was a learning curve for everybody, including the administrators. And
Yeah,
at one point, they even, after we had you, Scott, do our feasibility study, and we were thought this is a great project and we're good to go, but it was very, very preliminary still. Um, at one point, the county thought we weren't qualified for that loan, and we were pretty far down the road then with design and so forth. So that was pretty surprising. Another thing I just want to be sure and share is it was we initially thought that we needed an architect, having done additions and so forth in the past, and really needing structural a lot of stuff. We ended up using a designer. And because we were doing a basement conversion, we had actually, some infrastructure there already. And it was probably the cost of
I'm sorry,
architect.
Madeline. I think you broke up for me. I don't know if you broke up for everybody else, but
Yeah.
could you said you were saying it was how much less in cost, did you say? Oh, we're still breaking up, unfortunately.
Our designer, I don't remember.
There we go.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I think
You
I
are
think you're
as
cut
well,
up now.
actually. But
I'll zoom. It
are
never
we
gets
good
it
now?
never gets better.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're good now, I
So
think.
we used a designer, and I believe we got the reference from that designer from the ADU Center resources. So I would really advise people to, it's a lot of information, but boy, it's, a lot of it doesn't apply to you, but when you find that little nugget that does apply to you, it can save you a lot of headaches and a lot of money. So um, we found Jackie Mendez, if I can plug her, who's a
Oh, yeah,
wonderful
okay.
designer out of Benicia. Yeah. And she did a great job for us. But of course, we vetted her.
Yeah,
We called her references and so on and so forth, which I strongly recommend as well.
yeah, that's great. Don, what do you think is probably your biggest surprise, good or
Um,
bad?
well, mostly it went pretty well, quite well, but we had quite a problem with PG&E.
Mm.
It took them 2 years from the time we applied for new service for this unit till when they actually turned us on. Two
Right.
years, and it wasn't I mean, I have problems with PG&E, but it wasn't the organization so much as the individual project lead that they assigned us to, who just wasn't functioning. And I finally got a replace. But meantime, we had to let the tenants move in by, tapping off of the main house service for months, and then it took a while to get the solar going. So it cost me probably $5,000 of extra labor and lost solar output because of PG&E.
I've heard very a lot of similar stories in that the permit process for PG&E is separate from what the county or the city does. They have their own permit track at
Right.
PG&E, and it can take years. Whereas the cities and the counties are supposed to turn things around in 60 days, or sometimes less, depending on which state law we're talking about. But it's PG&E where it tends to be kind of a long time. Um, I want to say, Madeline, about the Napa loan. You were an early. It is a Napa funded, Napa run loan, and you were a very early applicant. It was a learning progress. I mean, full disclosure, the ADU Center is connected with Napa on this program to help, try and help it make it run. We had a lot of learning to do in the early
Yeah.
days of the loan, but there are some public incentives. As I say, Napa's got theirs. Marin County has a, and Don, you used the Marin County program, right? I think you were the first to use the Marin County permit
Well, yeah, so
program.
they have a reduction in
Fee reduction.
ADU
Yep.
permit fees of $2,500 if you build any kind of an ADU, and $10,000 if you build one that you guarantee is going to be rented affordably to low-income families. We were the first one in 8 years and hundreds of ADUs built in Marin who actually signed that document. And it was because I think partly the document was, it really needed to be made more palatable to the homeowner, and I got them, they rewrote the document according to what I suggested, and that's when I
Yep.
signed it. So maybe we'll see more of those. And the permit fees were $23,000 for this place, including the coastal permit. So $10,000, helped, but there was still $13,000 of permit fees.
Yeah, and the coastal permit is a whole nother layer of
Yeah,
complexity.
yeah.
For those of you who are in the coastal zone, we always encourage everyone to start talking to their county or city early on. But if you're in a place where you've got well septic, or you're in a coastal zone in particular, like definitely start those conversations earlier. If you're living in a place where you have an ADU center, go to them and start talking to the county or the city, because a lot of the stuff, I think, Don, you might have said this last time we talked, is that doing a lot of the due diligence and the work ahead of time before you get to a designer, can really help you keep your costs down, keep your timeline down, keep the surprises down. How much time do you guys think you spent before you were talking to a designer or a contractor? And what would you encourage people to do when they're in that sort of that pre-construction phase?
Make it your hobby.
Well, I mean, there's
Keep
some,
good records.
Yes.
there's a lot of stuff you can do before you spend any money, that can let you know whether the thing's even feasible or what the boundaries, the constraints are going to be. And like you can apply for PG&E service right off the bat and go in and talk to the people at the county or the city about um, planning permits and building permits, and find out about, as you mentioned, the septic and the well, if you have a well, or in Bolinas, even if you have city water,
Oh yeah, you have
we have the
community water
moratorium.
Bolinas. Yeah.
So you can do all that ahead of time and do a site plan on, with pencil and paper, and find out what your setbacks are and all of that. You can get all that lined up before spending a penny. And then, okay, now you have a pretty good idea of what your constraints and what you can build. Then go talk to a contractor.
I had a homeowner once tell me that they were in mid construction, and they'd reached back out to us, and she said it's like the most complex, nerve-wracking Thanksgiving dinner for all your in-laws, that you've ever put together. And if you haven't like prepped your work and made your shopping lists, you're gonna have a bad day. That really resonated with me. I thought, okay, that makes sense. Like, you really want to try, and as you said, there's a lot of things you can do early on. Even if you don't live in a place where that has an ADU center, there's a lot of research you can do early on. I often recommend for folks, if you're thinking about it, and Pay for a plumber, pay for an electrician to come out to your property and say, hey, I want to build an ADU. Look at my existing panel, look at my sewer line or my septic system or whatever, and let me know, like, how bad is this? What am I going to be looking at with this process? And with almost all ADUs these days, junior units notwithstanding, you have to get a second panel. PG&E is going to be pretty heavily involved, so understanding that, but getting those professionals out, and that might cost you a couple $100 to pay for their time, but really digging down into where they see, slope or where the power lines run or all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Take good notes because that's going to really pay off for you as you go into a design
Yeah,
process.
that's a really good investment early on,
Yeah,
and they're now requiring 200 amp service, which is just ridiculous. But
that's right.
it almost doubles the cost of the installation because everything's bigger, the wires, the conduit, and all of that. But there it is.
Now, I want to talk, Holly, about your junior ADU because we
Okay.
often get asked to define a junior ADU, which I'm happy to do. But can I ask why you chose to go with you went with the garage conversion? It's under 500 square
Yeah,
feet,
so let
so it
me
could be either.
give you a plug for the ADU Center people. Take one of everything or download and copy because you think, oh, I'm gonna do an attached ADU. I'm not gonna do a JDU, whatever. Then you actually get into it and you're like, oh, where's that stuff on that other thing? I think maybe. And so if you have the attached ADU, detached ADU, and junior ADU, and you have all that information, it's an evolution of your knowledge and your decision making.
Yep.
So don't stick a fork in it too soon. Um, so we thought, oh, okay, we got the website where you can plot a potential ADU. That
Hmm.
was fantastic. And then we realized there's literally going to be no yard because our the shape of our yard is so weird. Our backyard has three different houses against it. So we're like, okay, what do we want? What are we going to use it for? And and you need to identify this whole project. What do you think is going to be happening in 5 years? How are we going to use it in 10 years? Are we going to resell it? And that helps you decide because I'm like, okay, for resale, for someone to buy it, the kids are going to need the backyard. The parents can park their car out front. So we decided to sacrifice the garage and park my dad's Challenger with the car cover.
Now, with a garage conversion, this is something that we get a lot of questions of. There's kind of the assumption that you've got three walls and a roof. It's not going to be that much work. How was that experience for you in terms of it's
Yeah,
probably more than most people think.
I ended up having to have the engineer because they were shifting just enough from the garage support because we put windows and then so we stayed within the footprint and we didn't change the roof or anything like that, but they moved enough around that we had to have engineering assessment. It cost more money. Um, that affected. So also analyze your current house. Do you want a water heater, heat pump? Don't just focus on the ADU, JDU. What is my future for my house? We ended up getting rid of our water heater and then use that, our main house water heater, use that little inset for a giant shelf where they can have giant baskets and storage. So, um, let's see, what else did you ask me? So the JDU, oh, the other thing I didn't tell you about is part of that resale thought. Um, if somebody bought it and they want grandma to have her own apartment, but still feel safe where she can walk back and forth, we had so we used part of the garage and made a parallel inside our house closet so that if they want to
Ah,
convert it, we had it reinforced. So if they want to open it up, it's reinforced. It's an easy punch through, and you'll have a walkway. So
right.
that's where I'm like, think what do you want now? We think financially, if we're challenged, we'll have to move in the JDU and rent out the big house, which is another thing that people need to understand. You cannot rent at this moment, I understand. We still can't rent both the main house and the JD. You can only rent one. And so that affects how you design too, if you think you might end up using the J-do, which we might. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll jump in and just say, for those who are coming to this stuff new, a junior ADU is a subclass of ADUs where a regular ADU can be any size from typically about 200 square feet up to 1,000 square feet, 1,200 square feet, depending on your local rules. Um, Attached, detached, part of the main house, a basement conversion, those are all regular ADUs, and you're allowed one of those. There's an asterisk on that, but I'll leave it at that. You can add one of those and one junior. And the junior is restricted. It has to be under 500 square feet or under, and it has to come from existing space at the main house, which includes attached garage, but not like detached garages. So like a garage conversion, a downstairs bedroom conversion with a master bath suite, that kind of thing. Those can be turned into juniors, and so you're allowed one of each. But one of the other restrictions on the junior ADU is that you have to live on the property. So you have to, if you rent one, you have to live in the other. For a regular ADU, you could live anywhere and rent them both. So there are some reasons to go for a junior ADU. There are some additional restrictions. I'm going to keep it kind
Mhm.
of surface level, but that's kind of the broad strokes about a junior.
Well,
Uh,
and that's a good point. Also, we started with the J-do, staying within our footprint. And then if we did want to go crazy and take the backyard because 14 relatives need to live here, then we could add that detached ADU also. So, uh, someone's just asking about the website. I can't remember what the website is. But you get to move your little
Symbium, I think it's
Symbium,
yeah.
Symbium. You get to move it really helped you visualize the shape and how big. Oh, the other thing I wanted to tell you guys is just start from a clean slate. Don't get focused on this is our area. So what I wanted to do, I was trying to get the designer to consider an ADU kind of in front and we have setbacks and all of that. So I said, we still have all this space. So I talked to the neighbor. We wanted to redo our fence and got her to agree to extend our fence laying out as far as we could. So her backyard enlarged, our side yard enlarged, and so we were able to provide a fenced-in private patio for the J-do about 400 square feet. And that made all the difference from feeling like there's a room um, to it feels like you're at a mini house because
Yeah.
the outside door has glass, and so you can see the patio and the landscaping and stuff like that. So
There's a lot of designers who I've
Yeah.
spoken to who've done great ADUs, and they say, indoor outdoor space is critical for a small house. And Madeline, yours is about the same size. It's a little bit bigger, 499 versus 409, I think. But you went for a regular ADU, and this is a basement conversion. How was that process for you? And I have to ask, is your house is it historic? Is it one of the sort of the big basement historic homes?
I didn't hear the actual question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is your basement conversion, how was that for you? And is your house sort of historic or early
Yeah,
20th
yeah. We
century?
have a 100-year-old house in
Okay.
downtown Napa, and but the part that is beautiful about our ADU is on the west side of the house. There is what used to be
Oh, unfortunately, you're breaking up again.
seen on historic sites, but we don't use that. We have, we built a modern garage and an office and so forth on the east side of the house at our driveway, and we often go in and out of the house from the driveway, having driven in. So on the west side of the house, there's this private little entrance, and there's this private little area, outdoor area for our tenant, and it's just it's a beautiful little private concise place. You would think building a second unit in your own house, in the basement of your house, I mean, it's below our bedroom, it's below our the place where we sit and watch television in the evening and so on and so forth. But it's very private. When our tenant goes in and out, we hardly know that she's there. Um, and the the building codes are such that, you put 2 layers of 5-inch sheetrock between yourself and the people up above, and insulation and so forth. And, it's a beautiful thing. We don't know she's there. So it's, a lovely little concise home for our nursing student.
Yeah. Holly. Oh,
Okay,
we got Holly in
so
that.
big point. So she's above. They layer a little bit differently for upstairs and downstairs than they do for side. So we asked our contractor to put the heavy duty, R20, la la, I don't remember all the names. Um, I'm not sure we got that. So what
Ooh,
we did, my husband's hard of hearing. So before anybody moved in, I said, okay, let's make sure we understand what volume we can listen to our TV. And we go in there and I'm like, oh no. So I'm constantly going, what's our volume? What's our volume? 10. Okay, can't go over 10. So make sure you put the extra money in for the insulation because it'll probably save your marriage.
Yeah,
I put
that
Symbium in the live Q&A, the link.
oh great. Thank you.
Mhm.
And I think we have a great question in the from the chat that I'm going to throw out now, which is, what aspect of the build proved much more expensive than you expected? Um, and understand cost of windows, for instance, those things can really add up. Were there any parts of your build that you really, you'd budgeted for, but the budget was not adequate for the process? I'll go to
God,
Don.
yeah.
um, so when we spoke last night, one of the things that you'd mentioned, which I thought was an amazing tip, was if you order stuff early, appliances, for example, or curtains, for example, you want
Oh
to make
yeah,
sure
I
you.
mean, we did a lot of shopping. I did for appliances and items of various sorts, and where the contractor might not, they might have their standard sources and just go with whatever's out there. So like it does save a lot of money for the homeowner to do some shopping. At least, online shopping. You can buy anything online now. You don't have to go schlepping around to all these stores. And the fellow in the question had particularly pointed to windows, and so I love wood windows, but I'm really disenchanted with wood windows for two reasons. One is they don't last, and secondly they're really expensive. And so I'd always thought that vinyl windows were like the cheap, sleazy choice, but they're really nice now. They make really good vinyl windows. Uh, and we bought Milgard, but there are other good brands out there too, and they're double pane, and they have the tempered glass for the wildland urban interface zone, and they were like $600 a piece, and they slide smoothly, and we have casements too, and so windows aren't as bad as I expected them to be. There weren't really any items that ended up more expensive than I thought. But another thing on cost is I would like to say that um, it's if in terms of attached or detached, um, it's cheaper to go detached. Like to try to integrate a new thing onto an existing building is more trouble than it's worth, and it requires a lot of engineering and design time and contractor fiddling around to weave it together and not have it leak, and then you've got the privacy issue of the noise and everything, and you can use a pre-approved plan if you go detached, and it doesn't have to be that far away. There's no rules about how close the buildings can be to each other, but having it detached saves a lot of money and a lot of problems.
To your point, Don, we're in a historic district, in a historic house. When we built our addition, which is a garage and so forth, we had to go through a historical design review, which was a cost and a lot of lead time and yada yada, even though we're very committed to preserving the historic nature of our house. Um, but we were able to bypass a lot of that with the knowledge and going over to the a building department ourselves and the planning department, which happened to be right next door to each other in Napa, which is convenient, and chatting with people about what was required. I mean, we had to put in wood Marvin windows in our little ADU, even though you can't see those suckers from the street, you know. Um, but you know that that was what was required, and but knowing that in advance and expecting that, and understanding what's going to be required of your unique situation is important. And I again can't emphasize how important it is, I think, to get there face to face with the building and planning people and just learn from them.
Yeah.
You
And I
know,
want to I
ask
want to
questions
I want to touch on the historic neighborhood issue for a minute, because
yeah.
for a long time, doing almost anything in addition to a historic neighborhood, a garage, that's very restricted. It's there's often a
Mhm.
design review process, there may be a public meeting process. It's complicated. One of the benefits, as you discovered with ADUs, is that they kind of have to declare all the requirements ahead of time.
Yep.
It's not a subjective. There's no design review. There's no public hearing. If they say you have to match, if you have wood windows, you may have to match with wood windows on the ADU, but you are allowed to build by right in a way that with an addition, you don't have that protection. So with ADUs, there are, it is one of the greatest benefits from a development standpoint, but also big challenges is it doesn't follow all the normal rules. It follows most of the normal rules, but there are all these carve outs for ADUs that allow you to do things you couldn't do with another kind of construction project. Um, I don't know, Holly, did you have a surprising cost during your?
Well, one, I want to say, woohoo, Brandy, thank you for the news that as long as the JDU has a private bathroom. So I was just getting ready to say, don't don't do minimum. So if it says minimum JDU requires, you can share the bathroom, you can share this and that. They have to have their own interest. Um, do something that's going to appeal to you and someone else. And so we were trying to decide. It was 405 square feet. We were permitted for 420. Not sure why, but and we're like one bedroom studio. So I researched how it affected rental prices and desire, uh, demand and supply. And definitely there's a higher demand for one bedroom and absolutely put washer and dryer in. That's a big demand for your renters. So we have full size but stackable. So it's just tucked in. Um, I guess it's just a reminder of future and and we would get different people's opinion, whether it's the engineer or the fence guy. What do you think? Should we consider this? And so I was thinking of customer service too. What am I going to expect? A nurse, that's who I read. Um, does she need to go out in her robe to take the garbage out? How can we change that? So what we did was there's the front fence that she goes out to her car, but we also have a gate in the back fence that all she has to do is open the gate and put her garbage in our our extra garbage can, and then my husband just takes it out with our garbage. So that has been, they've really appreciated that
Yeah.
little. So there's just a little tiny things as you go through, say, can I make it better? And it doesn't have to cost more. We just do that extra customer service. And I do mid rentals, which is different than Madeline and Don do more long term. So I do, a minimum 1 month, anywhere 3 months, 9 months. Um, it's never empty. We've had it a year and a half, literally like 3 days in between clients. There
Wow.
was one I had somebody moved out in the morning. I had housekeeping come at noon, and someone else moved in that night.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I try and manage my table turnover.
They're in demand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's actually a great segue to talking about some of the landlord issues, because we often tend to focus on, I say we at the ADU Center, we focus on the pre-construction and the permit process, and people have tons of concerns about the permit process, which I think I gathered from you guys yesterday. the permit was not the problem. It was the cost, it was the construction, it was a lot of other things that we, are hard to look at ahead of time. But you're all landlords now, and I think Madeline, you were a landlord before as well. But how has that experience, changed, or what would you for people who are considering ADU, who will become landlords, whether it's to family or to other folks? Do you have a single piece of advice, or what would you want them to know?
I have a ton of advice. We're landlords, it's part of our retirement strategy. And we became landlords 10 years ago, and and uh, we, with a few exceptions, have the same standards as you. You need to know who those people are, need to be able to pay their rent. And so we advertise with very good and really accurate information about the accommodation, and applicants apply. We actually use Zillow plain easy. It costs the applicant $35. It costs us nothing. And Zillow takes their application, it gives them to uh, paste and document their employment history and their rental history, background check through all the public. It does a credit check. And
Madeline, I think you're breaking up, maybe due to a low internet speed. If you turn off your video, it might improve it a lot, because we're missing half of it. It was Zillow that you said.
There I go. Do you like years younger? Anyway, you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds like, my advice is to treat it as a business, in that you need to have a good neighbor, you need steward of your property,
Oh, well, that did not fix it. I'm sorry.
Huh?
It did not fix it. I was hoping it would, but something else is wrong.
Yeah.
Anyway,
John,
for those out there, she said that Zillow
Oh, well.
was the one who did they have a vetting service, and that was a huge tip.
yeah. Anything else you guys want? Okay, Holly.
So yeah, when I was looking at, am I supposed to increase rent? Am I not supposed to? At the time, do your own research. The rent increase was a cap of 5% annually plus the CPI, Consumer Price Index. I haven't bumped it up. So again, determine, are you going to be a midterm rental where you could potentially have gaps, or do you want to do long term? There's positive, negative, both. My first client actually, or my first resident, she said, "What if I stay a year? Can I get lower rent? Because we have a furnished apartment." And so I calculated, if I'm down, 2 months, if I don't have 2 months, what would be my annual intake? And it's like, yeah, that's fair to have a commitment. And it was great to just the first person for a year to start having money come in to pay the giant HELOC. But I still, and as far as cost, I believe it was $435 dollars per square foot, which fits in what is considered your normal. Um, Things that came up that the city got confused and they had to change things. The certificate of occupancy was affected. So make sure for your county whether you have to have a separate address or not.
Right.
And then whether you have to have a separate meter, or you can have a separate meter if you want. Because I got different answers depending on the specialist. Um,
And I think I'll say on the separate meter, you were right in that era where there was some. It depended on who you got at PG&E. I'll
yeah.
say now it's
Oh, okay.
it's mostly separate meters for everybody. You should assume
Okay.
a separate meter.
Okay. We do not have a separate meter, but we have a separate address.
Right.
Then, as Madeline said, make sure check things out, the appliance. So I ordered this dishwasher for the price. Didn't even dawn on me that it wouldn't dry the dishes, but it's more natural, organic drying, you know. Yeah, so read the fine print and open every package. Don't wait for Christmas because I got the wrong items. But I was just stacking the boxes, getting everything ready for when I needed it. So by the time I opened the fact that I got someone else's curtains and open. So definitely do that. And then
I did a similar thing.
yeah, go ahead.
Dishwasher that got dropped off the back of the truck, and I did about it until I opened the curtain and like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, appliances, I think Madeline, you said you had to turn it in 48 hours was the return policy.
I bought a dishwasher and a microwave. I think all of them actually through Lowe's, and
Mhm.
didn't realize because we buy appliances for our buildings. Generally, we're instantly the old one. In case we had
Oh, we're losing you again,
our
Madeline.
garage for a while, I to do about
I'm sorry, you've broken up again. We've got 7 minutes left, so let's jump to some of the questions.
There was one about sound. I've done some research on sound, so I'd like to say a few words about that if we have time.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's jump to that, Don.
The most important, this would be, of course, for JDUs and attached buildings and maybe 2 stories with separate units up and down. But the most important thing is to use staggered studs because the sound transmits through the stud. So you don't want coupling from one
yeah.
side to the other. And then stuff it full of lots of insulation. And then there's this product out there called Quiet Rock, and I used it for my guest room on my main house, but I never really evaluated how much difference it makes. It's 3 layers. It's a cement layer and then a rubber layer and then a gypsum layer. And in theory, it should help a lot because every time you get a change in materials, you have a reflection of part of the sound. But it's very difficult to work with. You can't cut and snap it like you can sheetrock. It just, but it might help. So those are and also the last thing is have no gaps, even if it's a 16th of an inch where there's an air gap from one side of the wall to the other, the sound will just pour right through that. You have to caulk every seam all around the periphery where there's not taping and mudding.
Yeah.
So that's it for sound.
So there's a lot of details in soundproofing.
There is
Really.
similar requirement of fire protection as well.
And contractors don't know anything about soundproofing in general. It's a specialty.
Yeah.
But those
All
are the
right.
main things. Those are the ones that'll make the big difference.
Thank you. I see there's a question about the forgivable loan in Napa. So I'm gonna talk quickly about that. So if you're in Napa County, and you can be in any of the cities in Napa County as well, Napa County has a forgivable loan program. We've done a webinar on it. You can find it on our YouTube page and our Napa Sonoma ADU Center site. But essentially, the very short pitch is, if you rent to an income qualified person in Napa for 5 years, they will forgive the entirety of the loan. The loan is up to $100,000. Depends on the kind of ADU that you're building. At this point, there is no income qualification for the homeowner, but there is an income qualification, obviously, for the renter. You can rent to family as long as they income qualify, and every month that you rent to that person, they will write off a 60th of that loan. It is a little bit more involved of a process. Hopefully, it's smoother than Madeline's experience was when she did it early on in the game, but there's a little bit more of an involved process of applying for the loan, and you go through one of our consultations. There's some other paperwork and things that you need to fill out, and criteria that you need to meet, educational criteria that you need to meet. But it's helped a lot of people build affordable ADUs in across Napa. I mean, I haven't seen anything else like it anywhere in the country in terms of getting affordable ADUs built. So we're seeing more public incentive work kind of in that vein, not as aggressive as Napa's is. But I dropped a link in the webinar chat. You can click on that link, and that will take you to Napa County's website to start the apply for the loan or learn more about the loan. And again, I said we have a webinar, and also if you want to email me, scott@aducenter.org, I can go into more depth and put you in touch with more resources.
On that subject, Scott, one thing I would love to share that apply for those loans is if you are not getting additional loan from a lender, like for example Redwood Credit Union, which is very involved in that program, you have to find a funds control company
Yep.
administer all of the funds that get to DU. And that was extremely challenging for me. I think, at least at the time I looked, there were two and only two licensed in the state of California.
Yeah.
So start
That's it.
looking
So
for that early if that's your case.
yeah, so I will shout out to Redwood Credit Union for helping develop an ADU loan, an actual ADU loan product well before almost anybody else did. But as you said, the Napa loan requirement, there is a funds control requirement, which basically means you can't go out and buy a Corvette with the money. Everything that gets spent from the loan money has to be spent on the ADU. And so funds control is a third party process where they basically you send your receipts to them and they pay the receipt provided that it's for the ADU.
You also
And they're
deposit your own funds.
Yeah, also deposit your
Yeah,
own funds. That's right.
yeah,
And in Redwood Credit Union, I believe they do that whole thing because it's a construction loan, and
right.
on bigger projects, funds control is a pretty common thing. It's not so common on smaller residential projects. So that's a thing for four things. You know, as I think one of the common threads among all of these things is details really matter on design, choosing choosing your contractor, looking at the fine print of whatever financing package you put together. There's a lot of details in these things. It may be 400 square feet. It may be a fairly small unit. It may be built in a garage or in a basement. But there's a ton of detail. There's a ton of information out there, but there's a ton of detail that you need to track and stay on top of. These are challenging. I won't mince words. We're almost at time. I want to jump to really quick questions for Sharon. Petaluma County doesn't have a public incentive process for ADUs at this point. We don't know if they're going to. You know, budgets are hard. Budgets have been cut everywhere, so unlikely. But there is more demand for ADUs all the time. And then we had two questions for Holly about
Mhm.
marketing tools for midterm rentals, finding traveling nurses.
Yes, and you're right, David. I use Furnish Finders. Their application fee is $50. I think Madeline said Zillow was 35, and they do the background check. It's super easy. If there's something I can say that's easy, is um, you have professionals coming into town. My first one was a teacher, and then it's been nurses ever since. So you know they have a strong income, and they just have a website. I didn't advertise anywhere but in Furnish Finders. Um, but I'm a great communicator. As soon as somebody has a question, I answer. Customer service, customer service. So I usually have somebody waiting, and then I let them know a couple months, so and so will probably be out. Um, and then people tend to extend. The nurses start with a 12-week contract usually, and then they'll extend another 12 weeks, 12 weeks. So it's easy for them to stay a good 6 months. And a tip, I think ADU Center said, one of your papers said, don't don't fill it with cheap stuff. Except you said it very professionally. Um, don't go to the thrift store and get five different silverware, and take the time to research and spend your money wisely, but have it feel like they're going to a hotel or on vacation, or not in a thrift shop. So anyway,
I think this also touches on the design aspect. When you have a small space, right? We're mostly used to 1,000+ square foot homes for most people. When you have a small space, every inch matters, every angle matters, every piece of silverware matters. The details, again, the details matter, and that extends through the whole project, from thinking about it all the way through, people living there.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think we're at time. Thank you so much. I will ask I have, one final question is, you guys went through all this. Believe, except for Don, I think you were on budget, but they cost more than you expected. There was a lot more to the projects than you probably expected. Now that you're past your all, I think, 6 months to a year into renting, or more than a year, what are your feelings about it now?
Totally worth it.
And again, in a heartbeat.
Yeah. Yeah. You meet really neat people. You maintain your own space, but if you want to say hi, you can. And it's I have the Redwood Credit Union. I had to get a HELOC because a construction loan wouldn't work. So that's the other thing, you guys. There's a chicken egg thing. You have to have the design, you have to get the bid, and then you have
Yep.
to have this, but you got to have the money. I had a grant, and there was a money manager.
Hmm.
What did you call
Hmm.
it? I forgot.
Funds control. Yep.
Yeah, so it was a $40,000 grant, but they charged $5,000 to manage it. So so know that you're only getting 35, and then the other big bummer is by the time, but they funded it December 26. So of course, I ended up getting 40,000 in income in 2022, and I didn't have any expenses till 23.
Oh.
So be ready for those little snafus too. So,
Yeah.
okay.
And I will say that for those of you who are considering building, just remember, when you're done, rental income is income. You need to pay taxes on it. Don't get caught out on April 12th when you realize all of a sudden all the
Yeah.
rent that you got for the last year, that you need to pay taxes on it. I think that's that. Thank you all for coming. Thank you. You guys were very generous with your time, both yesterday and today, in talking about this. I really appreciate hearing your experiences and your stories, and I'm sure that our audience did as well. Um, so thank you very much.
All right.
You're
It was
welcome.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Be sure to follow up with us. Here's our websites. It'll be in a follow-up email. We have a lot of free resources. If you have more questions, ask them. You need a feasibility consult. They're free. We're here to help you. We want you to succeed. So as much as we can do, we'll do it. Give us a call.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay.